Hmm. Uh, huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Ruben Olson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Cryptid Clues, Campfire Clues. I am your host, Taylor, and today I am excited to be going a little bit back to Taste of Home here, the Ogopogo. That is right. This was our first debuting episode of Cryptid Clues, officially getting into the cryptid realm between me and Ruben. And we talked a little bit about the sightings and the history in that episode, but I feel like, it's been a long period of time. There are still sightings happening, and I'm just going to reiterate and just dive back into this information. And for anyone that's interested, wants to get a heavier dose of knowledge on the terrain and the environment and a little bit more of the history of Okanagan Lake, you can look into that first episode that me and Ruben did on our live feed. Before we get into that, a couple of plugs. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca. You can also find us in our social media channels, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and on our Patreon. We get ad-free exclusive episodes. Additionally, you can send us an email, CryptidClues@gmail.com, if you want to say hi, have anything you want to shout out, or But without further ado, let's get into this. So I pulled a few different accounts here from one is a little bit old, a few decades old, and I have a couple of ones that are very recent. So this first one takes place in 2000, and again, shout outs to Ogopogo Quest. There's just a great collection of sightings that people have of the Ogopogo, or things that they weren't sure that they saw in Okanagan Lake. So I just kind of seeped through and see what I could find. I found a couple good ones here I just want to shout out, but definitely check out the website if you want to find a little bit more coverage of different sightings from people. But these were the prominent ones that stood out to me that I wanted to disclose here. So in the year 2000, a marathon swimmer named Daryl Ellis reported being accompanied for a short distance during his swim by two large creatures as he passed Rattlesnake Island. He described them as being 6 by 9, about 20 to 30 feet long, and the second one being significantly smaller. They followed him for quite a while and then disappeared. When he swam near the Okanagan Lake floating bridge in Kelowna, a creature with a large eye the size of a grapefruit came within 9 meters to get a close look at him. And then it had disappeared. So if you just want a little bit of context for that, so the floating bridge, back in the day, they have, of course, Okanagan Lake, and there were two jurisdictions, two cities. There's Kelowna and then there's West Kelowna. And this bridge would be floating as is on the lake, and eventually you got to get boats and stuff in there and such, so they reconstructed the bridge to be on top of the water for a little bit, and then it goes up and over so boats can go underneath and everything like that. But from Rattlesnake Island to the bridge, that is an exceptionally long distance. It takes probably about, off the top of my head, I'm going to say 5-10 minutes by boat if you're going at it like good speed. And for a marathon swimmer, I don't know how fast a marathon swimmer swims, but man, that's a pretty damn good time. I'd be swimming a heck of a lot faster if there were two giant underwater entities following me. That would be terrifying. 20 to 30 feet long. Holy smokes. But regardless, he's alive and he's well, and he got to report this, which is fascinating. So jumping a little bit ahead here, we're going to go to 2021. Ed was walking along a service road in Summerland, about 300 feet above the lake, around 8:15 a.m. on May 10th, 2021. She first noticed a disturbance in the water, with fish jumping and a large black object thrashing in the middle. There were also many seagulls flying over the one specific area. This lasted for about a minute. The black object then submerged and reappeared, moving on the surface towards the middle of the lake at a fast rate. This whole event lasted about 3 minutes, and then it submerged out of sight. So that I find fascinating. Again, they're so quick, these occurrences, but it's just you're at the right moment at the right time, kind of like the Loch Ness Monster sightings when you catch something like this. And when you're dealing with fish, I mean, yeah, we have lots of seagulls flying around Okanagan Lake. The lake genuinely looks like it could be the ocean when you're driving alongside it. You wonder how it's really not, because it's just such a massive chunk of water. Swimming in it is equally terrifying because it is exceptionally deep. When you're looking at the lake from about 300 feet above, it's just such a sight to behold. And you can see a lot. It's very clear. The water is very clear in itself too. It's a very clean lake. So it's not hard to notice disturbances either. There are many periods of time where there's no boats in the water, nothing like that, and you can see, okay, there's something clearly in the water here moving around, but I don't want to say people can be kind of fooled into seeing what they see. I think people can be genuinely honest, but there is that pre-existing notion like, I can't identify what this wave is in the distance or what's making this thrashing and these fish jump. It must be Ogopogo. You know, fair, okay, but it doesn't dismiss the fact that it could be something else. There's nothing really of massive size in Okanagan Lake, to my knowledge. We don't have anything like giant sturgeon or something like that as you would in lakes back east. But when it comes to this, like, I've gone swimming in the middle of the lake. It just floated there, and it's a deep lake, and it can be quite scary. It's very dark when you go down. The light doesn't get very far, but there's nothing large really swimming around there. There's definitely good fishing, but it makes me wonder about this encounter, because she's seeing fish jumping and a large black object thrashing in the middle. That's impressive, because something would really be making those fish panic. But the fact that it submerged and reappeared as well, moving on the surface towards the middle of the lake, that's intriguing, because if it's moving in its own directions and it's not going in a trajectory that the flow of the water is, then it leaves an interesting open to interpretation for that. Another thing I'll note on too is with this lake, Okanagan Lake, the bridge goes across usually, and this is such a weird, peculiar, I don't want to say phenomenon, but maybe someone has an explanation for it, but usually one side of the lake will be completely wavy, just crazy wavy, and the other side of the lake will sometimes just mostly, for the most part, just be calm, and it'll flip back and forth. And it's incredible how often this is. You'll be driving across the bridge and the one side looks absolutely pristine, like you could walk on top of it. It just looks so flat. And the other side, wavy beyond compare, just absolutely intense, like 7 seas storms kind of thing. And it's interesting. It's cool. So that's, if you can picture that, like the super flat kind of undisturbed water, that's usually the case most of the time around Okanagan Lake, so you would notice something disturbing the water. So in Andrew Stark's case, this is also from 2021. He's a photographer. He lives in a condo, basically south of a marina, in part of Kelowna. So he took photos around 4:15 p.m. on April 6th, and he realized from his patio overlooking the lake, he was able to estimate the distance was about 300 meters towards the southwest, and this object was staying within visibility for about 2 minutes. This is him realizing there's something out there. And again, like cameras and stuff, it's just kind of funky how we can't just kind of land what we're trying to as best we can and see what's really going on as well with the cameras that we have. But looking at the photos that he managed to take, they definitely were they were showing something. Like, I was trying to figure out what it was, but like it shows something, but it necessarily isn't like an actual object of any kind. It could be just like a little wave kind of arcing up, and there's just the shadowing, because the light plays a big factor in these sightings. It's the wake and the movements of what this object is doing that'll really kind of tell you a little bit more, whereas in these photos looks mostly like it was just could be just a shadow. But there's something worth inquiring with. Looking at all these other photos, though, from these different accounts, it's fascinating to kind of get that opportunity to see what they see. And while some do look like they could be a boat, and not all phone cameras can zoom in as nicely as others, but it's still fascinating to see what other people are seeing. I have one more account here, and this was definitely a longer one. It happened again on June 1st in 2021. So, and I quote, "I've lived in the Okanagan since 1982, and I've been water skiing out of Galatly Bay for over 30 years. I've had only a passing interest in Ogopogo sightings, thinking maybe there's something to the reports, maybe not. About 5 years ago, I was out skiing, pulling my friend across the lake from Peachland towards Rattlesnake on a perfectly calm day. No other boats around. I noticed a small black shape heading northeast towards Kelowna, moving at a good pace, leaving a V wake behind in the middle of the lake. Just like the picture taken from the shore above, I motioned to the skier that I was turning the boat to have a closer look. I drove up from behind, following the strange object in the water. When we came to within 150 feet or so, the dark object disappeared under the water and the wake was gone. My friend's 23-year-old daughter was in the boat and saw it as well, but there wasn't much to see above the water and no pictures, so I didn't report anything. We knew we had definitely seen something odd, and it wasn't a rogue wave or muskrat or beaver." I'm going to jump to a quick ad break here, and we'll be right back and finish off this account. And we're back. So there's a really interesting sighting that happened here. This is the one for June 1st, 2021. It was a clear, sunny, 10:30 a.m., kind of day. Galatly Bay was, again, perfectly flat. Not a single boat was in sight. It's the perfect day for any water skier. But this is when they noticed something. They were driving out towards the boat launch, before they hit this little ferry dock. And I quote, "I just about stopped in the middle of the road with cars behind me to point it out. Now I wish I had. People were walking along the path, but no one was looking out. It reminded us of a small whale sighting. Not a breach, but a smaller one moving along. We had just returned from 6 months in Cabo and saw whales almost on a daily basis. I noticed a splash of water and then a dark hub coming to the surface. And then it looked like 20 feet or so of a log moving along the surface, leaving a wake, and then it submerged, wake gone, only to resurface again 5 seconds after, with more splashes and several dark humps moving towards the northeast, leaving a wake before going under, and then flat water again. We couldn't believe our eyes. I almost drove off the road." And this I find absolutely fascinating because you're getting a lot of cooperative aspects here that stack up with other people's experiences watching this thing. So we're dealing with something that is going up and down, submerging, re-emerging, leaving a little bit of wake. The wake disappears as it goes down. I'm just trying to figure out what naturally occurring element could pose such a thing. And logs can bob up and down for sure. And usually it's something that, boaters have to be aware of. When you see a small stick sticking up out of the water, avoid it. Don't go near it on your boat because it could be attached to a massive log underneath the water that you can't see. And if you hit it, it'll damage the hull and you can't have that. And by all means, that could be the case here. Maybe it's just something really, really heavy, just floating at the right moment, the right time, and it just takes on too much water and the log just starts to come down a little bit more and just bobbing up and down, slowly getting heavier, and it puts out that aspect of, hey, it's just leaving a little bit of wake. It looks like it's going up and down under the water. It's not a concrete answer, but I'm just trying to bring a little bit of different perspective to this. And I think the Ogopogo personally is a real cryptid and is out there. I love the history surrounding it, the legend and the tales that are attached to this cryptid. It's fascinating. And yeah, I have to wonder because there's other accounts where people in kayaks encounter something. There's one lady in a kayak who had seen this really odd rogue wave just come out of nowhere from, again, a flat, undisturbed chunk of the lake. And to them, it felt like something bumped underneath the kayak, which could have been the wave passing through, but it sounded like something and felt like something had bumped her kayak, and it just disappeared. It submerged, and this random wave just subsided afterwards. So it seems to be a cohesive, consistent thing where these waves are passing along, and something is usually instilling this amount of force to stir the wave from moving and eventually cease it by dispersing itself. It seems interesting too, is a lot of these encounters are stemming from out of Rattlesnake Island and moving out towards, the bridge, which is another interesting factor. I've been to Rattlesnake Island, and you may think, oh, is it covered with rattlesnakes? Last I checked, no. But we do have rattlesnakes in this part of Canada and British Columbia, which is interesting when you think about it. And this island, it's rumored, I believe as well, that that's where the Ogopogo lives. And that must honestly stem greatly from the amount of sightings that occur and the degree of caves that are actually out in Okanagan Lake. There's a lot of caves, a lot of deep parts of the lake as well. I know there's lots of scuba divers. There's lots of people that go out to the lake and they explore and see what's really in the depths and all that. And it's quite fascinating. But at the end of the day, I do believe in the Ogopogo. I've tried looking into any sightings that occurred in like 2022, but I'm sure there are much more sightings and credibility to a lot of these stories that there are some locals that probably haven't come forth and shared. It's something that people can be very personal and private about these things, especially if you live on the lake in a more remote area of British Columbia's Okanagan, and you see something like this consistently, you're probably not very prone to talking about it. You want to be private, respected. You don't want people and reporters showing up on your property. So I understand that. The thing with the Okanagan Lake now is so much of the lakefront is turning into $1 million, $2 million lakefront homes that the rich are living in with huge windows staring out into the lake. And there's not obviously much reports from them. I can't really imagine many millionaires coming forward and saying they saw anything, but there's only a couple of those. The other aspect of that is all of these expensive homes being built along the lake, they're mostly vacation homes. So a lot of people from out of province or even out of just the city buy a second home here, and it sits empty for most parts of the year. So there's lots of spots that you may think are full of people, but it's easy to miss. This last account that I listed here, the driver stopped in the middle of the road. People were walking by, but no one was cluing into the fact that, hey, something is right out there. And I mean, that's the case. The only people that may really be paying attention are boaters, but boaters are looking out for other boaters, looking out for logs in the water. So it's a given that they would probably see something, but it doesn't mean that they might register that it could be some large underwater plesiosaur type creature. They might just have that disconnect that it could be just a log or something like that. You rationalize these things. Whereas when you are 300 feet above a lake and you see something inexplainable and you have that pre-existing notion that there's an Ogopogo supposedly in this lake, you're going to register it as an Ogopogo. It's the same thing where, you're a little kid and your fear clicks in, you see a shadow in the closet, and you register as it being the most scariest creature on Earth, and you're terrified and you run to turn the lights on. When in reality, it's not, because your brain is just accessing this pre-existing idea and image you have in your mind of what it could be. So at the end of the day, you gotta be in the right place at the right time. I already said that, but I'm reiterating it. So yeah, that's all I got for the Ogopogo. Again, there are many more sightings online. I just wanted to showcase these few because it was really, really cool just to kind of see a little bit more, taste of home with these people experiencing these things and talking about these things. So eventually I'm going to have to dive more into the Loch Ness Monster. I don't think I've even really talked about that, but it was on the cards for something I want to talk about today because there are a multitude of sightings, of course, for the Loch Ness Monster. I mean, give me a break, it's Nessie. But I thought I have to wait for Ruben before getting into Nessie. Nessie is just such an icon, and it's not something I can talk about on my own accord. From the sightings, the history, and especially the landscape. You know me, I love talking about the landscape. the history of the Okanagan is incredible, and I hope many of you go back and listen to our history episode, the history of the loch. I cannot wait to dive into that. There's probably a lot of information, and I've seen a lot more looking into the Ogopogo here as well. Again, I found a lot more kind of interesting evidence of just whale bones appearing in lakes. It's the weirdest thing, and I'm very curious to see what I can find with the loch. Maybe there's whale bones out there, with the Loch Ness monster, and maybe it's something that could help shed some light and be able to be attributed to what's really going on with these underwater cryptids. And if you are interested in underwater cryptids, period, or unextinct dinosaurs, I've done some past episodes on those as well, so definitely go check those out. But they're definitely going to be coming back with me and Ruben here when we discuss them together a little bit more prominently. So again, that's all I got. You can check us out at CryptidClues.ca. You can find us on our social media accounts, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and get ad-free early episodes on our Patreon. And you can send us an email, cryptidclues@gmail.com. So until next time, I'm Taylor. Thanks again for tuning into this Campfire Clues episode. We'll see you soon. Stay safe, everybody.